What is up, everybody? This is Lyle with No Hippie Trucking and Transportation, coming at you from the Hacienda in Colorado. If you happen to be hearing a little talking in the background, my wife does work from home, so you may be hearing a little of that going on. But let's get into a video that I've had kind of planned for a while. And this video is things that I have learned or things that have changed over the last year that have made me become a more profitable lease driver. Now, some of these things are things that you just actually start learning. They were actual flaws, I guess, of mine that I kind of worked through. And then some of these things are things that I've actually changed. And I think that by doing some of these things or learning some of these things, I've become profitable, let's say 12, 15%, somewhere in there. But let's get into them, all right? The number one, or let's not say the number one, but the first thing that comes to mind that has changed from the beginning of when I started leasing to now is learning how to back effectively. And you're saying, well, how does that change things up or whatever? When I first got out on my own, I was so concerned about finding a place at a truck stop to park and stuff like that, that I would maybe shut down 100 miles short, 50 miles short, or something like that, because I was afraid of, not necessarily afraid, but when you're newer, at least with me, a truck stop that was full, even though there were spots, still seemed like they were full to me. So I was just looking for a place to find a guaranteed spot. And one thing that my trainer told me, my second TNT trainer told me was, hey, Lyle, there's always a spot. So by me taking that mentality, it's allowed me to kind of drive out a little bit further. And that helps with the clock a lot of times, depending on the situation, when I go to deliver the load or pick the load up or whatever the situation is. So backing or not being afraid to back under certain conditions has actually probably helped me become a little bit more profitable. Another thing that's kind of helped me become more profitable is just being more efficient as far as dropping hooks and things like that. Rather than those things taking X amount of time, I would say that, it's hard for me to say because every situation is a little bit different, but I would say that I'm probably about 20% faster just doing dropping hooks and things like that. So that's helped me become more efficient because it's saving me time on my clock, which is going to be the next thing that I'm bringing up. And this is probably the most important thing. And I wanted to get to this kind of early in this video in case, sometimes people click off these videos early, and I definitely wanted this one to come up. And that is clock management. That is probably the most important way for you to become efficient, or not efficient, to actually become more efficient and make more money while leasing. And, when I first got out there, I was so concerned about just picking up a load, dropping off a load, that you never really looked at things three-dimensionally. And when you're able to look at things like that, you're actually going to become more profitable. I really wasn't taking advantage of using my personal conveyance. Once I dropped off a load, I was just happy I dropped off the load, and I was just driving to a truck stop or driving wherever, and I wasn't using PC. There's a couple other things that has kind of helped me become a little bit more efficient on that, but I don't want to really dig too deep into that for a number of different reasons. I think the main reason would be sometimes these situations are, they're situational. So by me saying, I've done this to kind of help me on my clock, it doesn't necessarily help in every situation. A good example would be, and we could just talk about this one, and then I can vaguely talk about the other one. But let's say that I have a drop-in hook and I can drop off let's say I have a 24-hour window. Now, when I first got out on my own, I might just run that whole clock in, deliver the load, and maybe just have little or no time on my clock. What I've kind of done now, if the situation presents itself, is I will shut down instead of driving that in, wait till the next day or my hours come back, then drive it in, so I have a bunch of time on my clock to go pick up that next load. That's just a little thing. Other things, like I said, to speak kind of vaguely on it, is your clock doesn't really trip until you're going over 5 miles an hour. So let's just say that most of the time when you're backing into docks or you're backing in at truck stops or you're backing in at any given place, you're going to be going slower than 5 miles an hour. And if the average back takes 5 minutes, you add that up over the course of a week. But just paying attention to my clock has made me more profitable. You know, I used to think that when I first got out there driving that my fleet manager was like giving me these long loads, like, oh, he trusts me with this, 2,500 mile load or, whatever. And in reality, what I've learned is those long loads they're giving you so they could just get you kind of out of their hair. They don't have to worry about you, manage you, anything like that, which kind of gets me to my next one, which is shorter loads. One thing I've noticed is that shorter loads are typically going to give me a little bit more bang for my buck. And a lot of times your fleet manager may not give you a lot of those shorter loads, and they may give you the shorter load, but how can I explain it? If you're, okay, and this kind of goes back to the next thing, which is the clock management, learning how to use these 7-3 splits, 8-2 splits, stuff like that. If you don't know how to operate those splits, you are going to be losing money. There's no ifs, ands, or buts away about it. If you're just looking at your 14-hour clock and saying, okay, I started my clock and it ends at, 14 hours later, you are losing money. And one thing that I learned is that once I was able to prove to my fleet manager that I know how to operate this clock, rather than me just dropping off a load and then looking at, some people might look at their clock and say, well, I only have this many hours left. Well, you only have that many hours left if you haven't done the split. So being able to operate that split and having your fleet manager understand that you know how to operate that split will give you an extra load here and there. So, like I said, and that helps a lot of times with those shorter loads. And it can help with any load, Another thing about clock management, getting back to that, is let's say that everybody brings up Atlanta. I really don't have much problem with Atlanta traffic. Maybe I'm just not going through there at the right time, and probably because I'm trying to manage my clock around it. A lot of people get under this thing like, okay, I picked up a load, my clock has started, I need to run now. Well, if you understand how to operate your splits and you're picking up in Atlanta at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you might want to, shut it down. Actually, you might have been able to start your split, depending on where you started your day, at the shipper. But what you're able to do, if you know how to operate these splits, is shut down, wait for the traffic to die down, and then start back when the traffic is better. Now, that helps as far as money. And then if you're one of those solar powered truckers that only likes to drive during the day, you can flip your schedule by using the 8-2 split. So clock management is very important. And I think if there's one thing I could say that separates people that are mildly profitable from those that are really profitable, is clock management. So like I said, these aren't anything, I'm not coming at you with any secrets or anything like that. These are just mistakes I was making or things I've learned. All right, one, which is a surprise, because if you've been rocking with your boy for a while, I said, you know what, I'm not going to turn down any loads. I'm going to just trust the system. And somebody had asked, if you turn down loads, do you get punished by your dispatcher? So you know what, I actually called my dispatcher and he started laughing, and he said it would take more effort for him to try to retaliate against that than just to find you another load. And I think that almost turning down a load every now and then, even just to turn down a load, almost I can't explain it. I don't know if they just turning down loads every now and then, I think just keeps people honest. But then again, I don't turn down a lot of loads. I don't turn down loads because of money. Typically, I turn down loads because of areas that I don't want to go into. And a lot of the areas I don't like going into aren't the areas where I see the highest uh, dollar loads coming out of anyway. But I would say don't be afraid to, or one thing I've changed is I've started turning down loads. And it does a couple things because a lot of people will look at turning down load as a bad thing, but if you can frame it the right way, you can actually build up trust with your fleet manager by doing this. And what I mean is, he sends me a load, I don't like the load for whatever reason. I'm going to go to him and I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to run whatever load you need. If you need a load going to downtown Manhattan, all that kind of stuff, I got you handled. I'm really not too excited about this load. Is there anything else I could take a look at? Whatever. And then, once you guys have got this takes that kind of leads me into the next one. So just to shorten this up, turning down loads I think keeps everybody honest. And if you're running a lot of loads that you don't like to run, I think that takes a toll on you mentally, where it actually does start affecting how you run. I know that if I'm up in the Northeast too long, I really don't have a lot of motivation at all. So it kind of brings me to the communication. So we're talking about turning down loads. Even if I'm going to take a load that I don't like and my fleet manager sends me a load, and this is another important one here. If it's a load I really don't like, but I'm going to run it, I'll just send out a simple email, or I say email because that's what the rest of grown folks use. I send a message to my fleet manager and say, I'm really not too excited about this load. I'm going to go ahead and run it. Can you find something a little bit more satisfying for me next time? And then he knows that you're taking loads that you might not necessarily want. And building up communication with your fleet manager is really hard to do because everybody has what they feel is a good load. Now, a good load for somebody else is not necessarily a good load for me. I've turned down a load and my fleet manager was like, "Are you crazy? This load is paying this much money." And I just sent back a message and said, "You know what? It's not always about the money. I will never turn down a load for you based on money." So that does, just even saying that to him takes away one of the things that he could always try to come back at me with is, why are you turning down this load? It pays this much. That takes that off the table. You can't really come back with that. And he knows it's a give and take, I guess, is what I'm saying. And that takes a while to build up. But I do think that the communication with your fleet manager, they could say it all they want, or people could say, this is a transactional business. And I've spoke with somebody about this before. I know I'm getting long-winded, and maybe this video isn't as good as I thought it was going to be, but a lot of people take this business like it's a transactional business. Like, they give you a load, you take the load, you drop it off here. What I try to do is take this business from being a transactional business to being a personal business. And you can't tell me that if I'm always coming to my fleet manager with respect, and there's always been this give and take, even over the people that take every load, but just the fact that he knows me specifically, knows my truck, all that kind of stuff. If there is a chance and there's two trucks in the same area, and let's just use human nature in this. You could take my fleet manager, any fleet manager out of this. I have something to give two people. They're both, one person's a great person, runs every single load, blah, blah, but I know this guy right here. I talk to him. I message back and forth with him. We have a good rapport. Human nature says the person that has a good rapport is going to get the load if it's a toss-up. So communication also helps, and I think this is a big one too. So let's say I'm delivering a load in a place, I call them truck stop deserts, like Maryland has some of those places, definitely like New Jersey. But if I'm delivering a load and I don't have a pre-plan, I'm going to tell them, 30 minutes before I think they're going to be unloading my truck, can I get a pre-plan ASAP? If I don't have a pre-plan within X amount of time, here's where I'm going to be driving. And there have been times when I've had to drive, I think I was in Maryland, drove to a truck stop 55 miles away, and I got a load that was 7 miles from there. I thought it was a fluke, but then the next time I did that and drove to a truck stop, picked up another load like right in that same vicinity. So saved me on deadhead miles. Who knows if the load was going to pay more or less than maybe what potentially the other load was, but communication is always going to help. I think that has helped me become more profitable with my fleet manager. And another one is detention. Now, this is one I really can't get into because every situation is going to be a little bit different. And it kind of depends on where your clock is. And I think some of the people that might be driving right now can understand this a little bit more. But I'm going to always use the Meyer in Lansing, Michigan is my case study on this, even though they all kind of can fall into this. But this Meyer in Lansing, Michigan has overnight parking. A lot of people get there. Let's say their appointment is at 4:30 in the morning. They pull in there at 11:30. They say you could check in at the guard shack as soon as you get there. Some people run right to the guard shack, go up there and check in, and then they say, okay, we'll call you when your door's ready. Well, the door is going to be ready around the same time that it was going to be ready, maybe even a little bit earlier, but you're throwing away some detention right there. So what I would do is I would get there as early as I could get there and then start my break. Hopefully it's 10 hours. If not, it really just depends. But I'm going to get there and I'm going to check in 30 minutes before I'm supposed to get unloaded. I'm not letting these guys off the hook on detention. So if I'd have got there early, and let me just use a phrase we used to use back in the day, if I got there early and shot my wad and went up to the guard shack and said, I'm here, I might get in an hour early. They might be able to get me out, maybe a half hour earlier than when I would be getting out if I checked in right on time. But I have a better chance of getting that detention if I check in closer to my appointment time, if that makes sense. Maybe I'm not explaining it right, but I don't let these guys off detention. I used to, unless I can get there super early, or if I have enough time on my clock to go run another load really quick, then I won't worry about this. But if I'm in a situation where my hours are low, I'm not letting people off detention. I'm not going to arrive there early or super early. I'm going to arrive as close to the appointment time as I can in hopes that I can get some detention. And that seems to work well, rather than, calling, can I get there? Now some places will get you in and out. And like I said, if you have time on your clock, do that. But oftentimes, you're picking up these loads or delivering these loads with really not much time on your clock. And nothing is better than getting detention during a break that you were going to have to take anyway on their lot. So that's a little bit different than this Meyer situation, but I really can't explain it. You're going to have to work your way through it. I'm just saying, if you focus on these things or think about them, maybe what I'm saying is making sense, because a lot of these things are so situational that it's hard for me to really, I would have to bring up specific instances. But if I was to break this down to anybody that's new, that's watching this, that's saying, what is the main way to become profitable? And this could be company or lease. I'm going to say clock management. One of my boys this here, one of my boys that left Prime, one of my favorite people to talk to, he just left Prime, and, I'm not digging at him, but there were times when he was like saying, I don't have time to run this load or this load. And I'm like, here's all you got to do, run this split. And he's like, I'm old, I can't figure that out. Well, I'm just telling you, you got to take time to figure this clock out, because that clock is your money. Any way that you can legally shave time off that clock, do it. If you're worried about, even specifics as far as yard move or regular drive mode, well, I don't even want to get into all that different. I'm going to leave logs alone, but I'm just saying that, that was some advice from Junior Honduras. Don't get too deep into the log. So I'm just saying, at some point you're going to understand how your clock works. And I'm saying, actually take the time to actually take the time to figure out ways to shave time off your clock legally, because there's a whole, man, I was throwing away so much clock time when I first started. It was unbelievable. I mean, easily, without a doubt, I'm saving at least 4 hours off my clock than what I was doing when I first started leasing. That's conservative. A lot of that stuff was just not even really concerning myself with the clock, and then the other part of that was just not understanding when, where, how. I was too focused on what the situation was at the given time, whether it be. I just had too much going on in my head. So anyway, like I said, this isn't that. This is just things. These are just things you might want to focus on. These are things that I was making mistakes on when I first got out there. Things I learned, and I think that they've really helped me step my game up. Again, I'm not saying that I'm the best lease operator out there at Prime. I think I'm somewhere in that, upper middle, somewhere in there. So these aren't any magic bullets or anything like that. One thing I can tell you is I'm profitable, and these are just some of the reasons why. Anyway, I hate to drag that on. Damn, we're at like 21 minutes. I know that some people were expecting more out of this video, but listen, this business is so easy that it's simple stuff like this that can make, it's little things like this that make a difference between $300 to $600 possibly a week. It's getting that extra load because you had the extra time. It's getting that extra load because you knew how to do the 8-2 split. It's saving, or it's, having your fleet manager looking out for, it's just it's like these little micro things that add up to a lot. So sorry for being so boring. Listen, I want to learn more about other ways that I could become more profitable. If you have been doing well at Prime or whatever company that you're with, it doesn't necessarily have to be Prime. You could be company, you could be lease. What are things that you've done to become more profitable? Leave that in the comments section below, because I'm always trying to figure out a way for that to happen. Because one thing I'm not doing right now is being profitable because I'm sitting at home. But I'm sitting at home for 3.5 weeks or something like that because I've been profitable. Anyway, I'd like to thank you guys for stopping by No Hippie Trucking and Transportation. I appreciate it. Comment, subscribe, and I'm out.